Hi, welcome everyone on Facebook, Live and YouTube, and of course, our regular friends on Zoom and Instagram. Friends, a lot to discuss today. We're going to take a deep dive into relationships, and the topic up for discussion for the next 20-30 minutes is 7 things you should stop doing for a healthy relationship. And that's going to be our topic for today. And we hear this expression a lot. Rabbis use it a lot, and therapists use it, and friends use it. We all want to be in healthy relationships. What do we mean? First of all, we try to figure out how to stay in a healthy relationship. What exactly is a healthy relationship? So, friends, I want to share with you a couple of ideas before we get going on our main topic. And I'm going to give you a few definitions of how I define a healthy relationship. And it may be very different to what you out there in viewerland define. I'm going to define it in a few ways. Number 1, shared goals. You know you're in a healthy relationship, no matter how difficult and challenging relationships can be. There are big ups in life and there are big downs. But all the time, you have a shared goal. You have a unified vision of where you want to be. If you don't mind, I'm going to use a soccer analogy. If you want to use a football one, that's also good. The soccer analogy I like to use is we all want to get the ball into the goal. That's the unified vision of everyone on your team on the field. How you get to that goal, that's a discussion. There are different plays, different ways to pass the ball. You got to dodge the referee sometimes. You can fall down, you get injured, but in the end, no matter what comes your way, you have a unified vision. If you don't have a unified vision, a goal of where you want to be, the whole thing becomes a tragedy. Because you're running one way and the other players, or in our case, the other partner, is running the other way, and then you don't have a symmetry. You don't have a unified vision. So shared goals and a shared vision of what you want to be for your lives. And every relationship and every family that I've ever counseled or been involved with always have different visions of what they want for each other. The idea is to try to combine those and make a unified vision. Number 2 is handling challenges correctly. Challenges come our way. That's just the way life is. What we need to do in order to be in a healthy relationship, which is what we're trying to define today, what exactly is a healthy relationship, is to handle the challenges correctly. There are right things to do and there are wrong things to do. And sometimes it's very, very difficult to discern, to try to figure out exactly what the right way to handle challenges that come our way. Loving and giving. Healthy relationships are loving relationships, and as we've defined so many times, a loving relationship is a giving relationship as well. So that's what we're looking for in all of our relationships. Now, we're going to be talking about, spouses, husbands, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, wherever you are in your particular stage of life. And things that I have discovered from my counseling and therapy practice and rabbinical counseling are things that need to stop in order to create that healthy relationship. But once again, what is a healthy relationship? It's shared goals, a shared vision, loving and giving, and handling challenges correctly. There's a lot more to it, but those are definitely the key points that we want to keep in mind. So what are these 7 things? And I do advise you to either write these down or do come back and listen to this. It'll be posted on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, if you want to go through these again. Number 1 I have found is that people avoid conflict. Stop avoiding conflict. People get uncomfortable. It's awkward to bring up things that have affected you, that have upset you, irritated you, angered you. things don't get better if other person is unaware that there's a problem. Many times we think, well, they know that, they know I'm upset. I'm telling you, they don't. You need to articulate it. Sometimes, actually very often, people don't have the tools to communicate the most basic feelings. Why? I don't know. Maybe they were born that way. Maybe they had to deal with family where things were not discussed in the open. Everything was kept hidden and undisclosed and not discussed. I'm not too sure. So in that situation, you need a third party. And the third party, whether it's a rabbi or a therapist or some friend who's outside, to be able to be in between and help you communicate, to reframe the conversation, but to avoid a conflict, to just sit there irritated, resentful. As I always say, and I've said it 1,000 times, I'll say it 1,000 more, hope you don't mind. If nothing changes, nothing changes. And I've dealt with couples who've held on and avoided conflict at the expense of their relationship because they're scared of what the conflict is going to bring up. And they'll stay away from things that have irritated them, angered them for months, years. Actually, I know people decades, until they just literally, eventually at some point, they break. You need to get to the core of what the conflict is. It's uncomfortable. You may not know how to communicate about it. No problem. Find a third party to sit between you and to help you communicate with each other. Clarity saves relationships. If you just heard those words from me today, it was worth you spending the 20, 30 minutes. Clarity saves relationships, and clarity does not happen on its own. It needs to be verbalized. It needs to be given over. So that's number one. Don't avoid conflict. Number two, stop trying to win fights. I know it's children. You get into a fight, you get into an argument, and you just want to win. And that's ego. We all suffer from big ego problems, but in a relationship, ego is a killer. It breaks everything else down. You've got to find solutions, and most importantly, and I can't stress this enough, those people who are just starting relationships, or even those people who have been in relationships for a long time, you just, most of the time, have to listen. And when I say listen, I mean actively listen to what the person is telling you. The goal is connection, not victory. This is such a key point that we all forget. It's not about who is right and who is wrong, because we always think we're right and everyone else is wrong. But if we take that attitude into our relationships, we're bound to have major stress and major problems. You don't want to win fights. You want to resolve. And sometimes you're going to have to step back and, as we say, fall on your sword in order to let this thing go. Stop trying to win fights. They aren't always winnable. Most of the time, you both end up losing. And I've seen it time and time again. Related to that, so let's just go through. There's a pattern over here, and I hope you're going to pick up on it. Number one, stop avoiding conflict. You need to discuss stuff. It's unavoidable to bring up things unless you want to bring resentment into the relationship, and resentment is a killer. Clarity saves relationships. Number two, stop trying to win fights. You're not children. Again, I know people who are in their 20s who are very mature and now know how to fight and discuss things and get through good solutions in a relationship. I know people in their 40s and 50s who still haven't figured this out. Whenever a fight comes up, they must win it. It doesn't work that way. Number three, stop denying other people's feelings. Your feelings are valid, but so too are other people's as well. And when we sit down, and I do this a lot, I sit with couples and I always wonder, I have a couch that couples come to meet me, and they sit down, and sometimes one will take a couch, and one will take a chair nearby, sometimes they'll sit further away, and as the relationship counseling gets further and further, I notice they start to sit closer and closer and closer. What I really want them to do, which people don't naturally do, is to actually look at each other when they are in a counseling with me. They need to acknowledge and don't deny other people's feelings. And there's various ways to do that. Number one is to listen, but we don't just listen with our ears. We listen with our eyes, we listen with our hands, we listen with our attention, we listen with our face, the expressions we make, the grimace I see people make when they hear an idea can, set people back. It may sound extreme, but it's really, really true. When Adam and Eve were created, the Midrash tells us they were created back to back. Whatever this means, they were back to back beings like this. And then Hashem separated them and made them look at each other face to face. Okay? The key to building healthy relationship is face-to-face communication. You don't just communicate with your mouth and ears, you communicate with your entire body. And I, at this point, can even figure out, maybe it's not a bit unusual to you, but I can figure out how a relationship is doing by the way they sit, face each other, cross their legs, look at each other, communicate with their hands to see how they're doing. All of these things are key signs. And I see it consciously, but many people will even pick up on these things subconsciously as well. You cannot deny other people's feelings. You may disagree, but you've got to hear them because your feelings count as well. Number 4. Now, this is a talk in and of itself. I have so much to say on this. I'm just going to download a little bit of information, and I want you to, if you don't mind, just try to relate this to your own personal circumstances. Number 4. It's going to sound very strange, but this is probably the most important thing. Stop trying to get people to think like you. Stop trying to get people to think like you. They don't have to think like you. They don't even have to agree with you. They have to respect you. They have to hear what you're saying, but they don't have to think like you. There are very few people in this world who really, really think like you. Chances of that person being your wife or being your spouse is possible. There are maybe moments when you think alike, but that's not what the goal is. The goal is to have a shared vision and to find a compromise in order to get your ball into the goal. Whatever that goal is, every relationship's different. Trying to get people to think like you is not the thing to do. And you're going to waste a lot of your time if all you're trying to do is get people to think exactly like you. They can't. They haven't had your background, haven't had your parents, your experiences, your education. They don't have your brain power. What you do want to do is to find someone or work with someone who respects your needs. Now that's important, okay? Respect is the key word. I don't understand where you're coming from. I don't know how you came to that conclusion. I can't even begin to think like you. But if you need me to do that, if you need me to get everyone to pick up their coats and hang them up, I don't need that. I just cannot think like you. I don't mind if the coats are left out. I don't mind if dirty dishes are left in the sink overnight. It doesn't bother me. I don't mind if there's dirt on the floor. I don't mind if socks left on the floor. I don't mind if we spend a little bit more on that piece of furnishing than you want to. I don't want and need you to think like me, and I don't want to think like you. But I can respect what you're saying. We're coming from different places. We've had different histories. This is so crucial. It applies in so much of our lives. People are constantly trying to persuade and cajole and anger people and get frustrated because you got to think like me. No one is ever going to think like you. Everyone's got unique perspectives and unique ideas. And this comes up 1,000 times a day in 1,000 conversations you have with many, many people. We're always trying to persuade other people to think like us. It comes to sales. In sales, people think they're trying to make people think like them. They're not. The salesman and the person they're trying to sell that object to, that pencil, that car, that what home, I'm not going to think like you. I'm going to show you some beautiful things about it and some virtues, but that's the best I can do. The rest is in your hand. Number 5 is related, and we've kind of mentioned it already, but it's crucial over here. And I mentioned it before. Stop waiting for people to read your mind. Be clear about needs prevents resentment. People cannot read your mind. You need to articulate what you're thinking and what you're feeling. And I know this sounds obvious, and I know I've said it before, even today, but people have this assumption that people just know how you're feeling. And there are people out there who are able to walk into a room and immediately tell if a person is out of sorts. You know, I happen to have that ability to some degree. After years of working and knowing people, I can walk into a room and immediately pick up if a person is out of sorts, feels left out, is not connected, and they need to be connected to. So, you know, I'm not a rabbi of synagogue, I'm an assistant rabbi, I help out, I give classes and events, I walk into rooms full of people all the time, and sometimes I see a person who's out of sorts, they're by themselves, I go up to them and approach them, sometimes they don't know who's spoken to, sometimes they're just, you know, in their own head. That's all good. But not everyone has that ability. And most people don't. I mean, I don't either. I have to go up to that person and say and ask them what's going on. So people wait and think, well, you know what? You should understand what I'm going through. Most people can't. And they don't have that power and that ability. And therefore, you need to articulate and be very clear about what you need at every single moment. It's crucial. Okay. Number 6 of 7. And we're going to review these again. I know I'm saying a lot of it in a short amount of time, but at least we'll get the headlines over here. Number 6 is very important. I've spoken about this before in relationship to in-laws and how to deal with them. But it's true in all relationships, especially when it comes to spouses and girlfriends and boyfriends. Number 6 is stop trying to make one person meet all your needs. Stop trying to make one person meet all your needs. Nobody in this world, there isn't one, besides God, nobody else is able to meet all your needs. And people think, and I don't know where this comes from, maybe it's the movies, maybe it's Disney, I have no idea at this point, but people have this impression that they can find one person who is going to meet all their needs, that can be their everything and solve all their problems and all their challenges. Give them constant support. It's not possible. There isn't such a person alive. No one has that ability. If they are, and they claim to be able to do that, they're a cult leader. Cult leaders hold on to what I call a monopoly on the truth. This is the truth. There is nothing else, and I'm going to be your savior in this situation. Besides a cult leader, nobody can do that, especially not someone you are in a healthy relationship with. They can't do it. And let me explain precisely what I mean. Many people go through challenges with family or friends or at work, and they come home after a long day and they will dump all of that onto their husband or wife. And this is really not good. It's okay and it's understandable that you have this frustration in your life. But if you think one person is going to solve, you know what? Probably comes from our mothers, you know? We have childhoods where our parents kind of like took care of everything for us, and they were our everything, and we're all looking for this great mother figure or father figure that's going to come along and just solve everything for us and cuddle us and be warm. And it's just not true. It's fake. It's a fake reality that we kind of take into our adulthood. And unfortunately, we kind of transpose that onto the people we're in relationships with. There is no such thing. You need to find help outside of your relationship in order to help yourself. Whether that's a therapist, a good friend, just outside forces who are there, because if you dump every challenge onto your spouse, it's going to end up really melting and breaking the relationship internally. It kind of like folds in on itself, you know? So you need help, and it's totally okay and understandable to go outside and not dump every single challenge, problem, and frustration. I'm not saying that you can't share irritations and problems with your spouse, but your spouse is not there to fix you. That's not their job, right? If we use the soccer analogy again, if you get injured on the field, the other player can't fix your leg. That's not their expertise, right? You're gonna have to get the guys on the side of the pitch to come on with a stretcher and schlep you off, right? It's true when it comes to physical problems, but it's also true when it comes to emotional problems as well. Your spouse is not going to be able to meet all of your needs, no matter how much you want them to. Number 7, and we'll finish this one. Stop demanding people respect your boundaries when you don't respect theirs. Now, boundaries is another topic in and of itself. And when it comes to families, extended families, siblings, in-laws, brother-in-laws, sister-in-laws, there's this, what we call in the field, enmeshment. Everyone kind of gets involved in everyone else. And there's a lack of boundaries. And boundaries mean I go up to a certain point and I stop, and then there's you, right? I'm not going to come along and encroach and give you every opinion and every thought and tell you exactly what to do. And there are such people out there. I meet them all the time who seem to have the solution to every one of their siblings' problems. You know, you can show respect and support and love and offer of help, but you have to respect boundaries. But if you want people to respect your boundaries, you're going to have to make sure you respect theirs. Because when it comes to boundaries, think of it as a fence between two homes, right? As soon as the fence moves one with the other, someone's getting less, right, of what they... So if I put out more, I'm taking away from someone else. And I pull mine closer, then they're getting more of my territory. There needs to be a boundary. And sometimes that means some things are not discussed. Not everyone in your family needs to hear every one of your life advice, right, in every situation. It's just not healthy. So you can't complain to me, right, therapist, the counselor, whoever, and be like, all these people are not respecting my boundaries, when if you dig a little bit deeper, you'll find that you're not respecting there and you are overstepping your boundaries in a very, very big way. And again, that comes, I have found, in many forms. Sometimes disrespect for boundaries will come to money things. And people will use money, especially in families, as a tool to get what they want, you know? And they will use that. I mean, the expression my wife and I use sometimes is, in families, people will give money and give it as a condition. Well, we call it, my wife have this expression, and I, golden handcuffs, right? That one side of the family will give money or a gift and expect certain things in return, attention and love and coming to us for Pesach or Rosh Hashanah or something, you know, because I've given you something, and that's a lack of boundaries as well. When it comes to, it's also more than that, but when it comes to like giving a gift or giving time or attention, really those things, if they're really a gift, they should come with no strings attached. Okay, we know there isn't such thing as a free lunch. Everything always comes with an attachment that comes with it. What you can't be doing is mentioning and expecting something from that gift, for example. So boundaries are really crucial. And by the way, boundaries don't just exist in the outer family, but also inside your family as well. You know, when it comes to children, I mean, I'm just still trying to figure this one out. Very, very difficult to give kids the boundary, because we're parents and we want to help and solve and cure. But kids need boundaries as well, especially teenagers. Teenagers are dealing with a lot. I'm blessed with a house with 5 of them. There's a lot going on. So to give them their boundaries, and one of the signs that you're not respecting boundaries, I have found, there's a lot more, is when they slam doors, right? Oh, teenagers, they love to slam doors. I always say that's a metaphor for, you know what? You're in my space. And I'm in my space right now, and I just leave them. Let them get their space and find their own area, right? That's a physical boundary when it comes to dealing with kids and spouses. Even when it comes to a spouse, there's an element of boundary of, I'm not going to overstep my boundary and just kind of like throw my stuff on you and pull something out of you. There has to be boundaries. Even a healthy relationship between husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever you're dealing with, there needs to be a little boundary. You can't say whatever you want, whenever you want. I was dealing with a couple recently, and the wife kept threatening the husband with divorce, And I've mentioned this before, and I put it in my book actually. I wrote a half a chapter on this. You can't just throw out certain terms and expect not to be repercussions, right? You just don't mention divorce. It just doesn't come up, right? You can't allow every argument, let's just get divorced. And when I was sitting with this couple, I actually listed certain things they should never be saying to each other. And this was one of them, right? Just don't mention the D word. There needs to be a respect. That, in a certain sense, is a boundary that I'm not going to cross, and I'm not going to try to elicit a reaction just by saying that. Let's just recap everything so you get there's a flow over here. So the 7 things to stop for healthy relationship. Number 1, stop avoiding conflict. Conflict means there's something that needs to be resolved, and there needs to be clarity, because clarity is going to help solve the relationship. Number 2, stop trying to win fights. The goal is not to win a fight. The goal over here is to find a solution, to listen, to connect. It's not victory. It's not who's right and who's wrong. Number 3, stop denying other people's feelings. People have feelings, and most of the time they're warranted. You may not understand them, you may not appreciate them, but you've got to respect them. Number 4, stop trying to get people to think like you. That's a big one. Very few people are going to think like you. They may agree with you, they may respect you, but they're not going to think like you. So trying to get everyone to think like you already is cultish and unhealthy behavior. Number 5, stop waiting for people to read your mind. Say it. Even if it's so clear to you and so obvious what you're trying to get over to them, they're not going to know. That look on your face is not going to be sufficient. Be clear about your needs, and that will prevent resentment. Number 6, stop trying to make one person meet all your needs. There is no such person. Besides God, no one can do that. And relationship with God is a good thing, but relationship with people is different. People are not gods. And if you try to make the person you're in a relationship with a god, it's going to end up really badly. And number 7, stop demanding people respect your boundaries while you're not respecting theirs. So if you feel someone's overstepping their boundaries into your territory, you better double check and make sure that you're not reciprocating, or actually the catalyst for them doing that is they're trying to push you back and end up pushing your boundaries over as well. Thank you all so much for joining. I spoke a little bit longer than I wanted to. Have a great and successful day. Thank you, guys.